Well, first, let me give you the context of Malaysia and China relationship. China continues to be Malaysia's largest trading partner for the 14th consecutive year, and China has always been the largest FDI investor into Malaysia. But having said that, the top two investors, the top two trading partners for Malaysia is both China and the US. And what we're seeing today is like Malaysia is back on the global investors' radar screen, and we have had good, productive discussions with both investors and companies from China and in US. In fact, we've seen quite a number of companies, both in China, US, and as well as in Europe, actually, have been engaging more countries in ASEAN and not just Malaysia on what you just described as friendshoring, reshoring, and this is, of course, as a result of the so-called decoupling. But anyway, Martin, the positive side is that we are going to ensure that what we have built over the last 50 years for Malaysia, especially with our relationship with China, and the recent visit by our Prime Minister, Dr. Sri Anwar Ibrahim, has elevated that relationship between Malaysia and China.
But does that put U.S. friendshoring or continued U.S. friendshoring in Malaysia at risk?
I don't think so, Martin. I think what we have seen is that Malaysia continues to be a destination where we are able to provide the right ecosystem for investors. Bear in mind, for companies, especially in US and China, they're looking at Malaysia not only because of the incentives given, but because of the major industries that have been in Malaysia for quite a while. I'll give you one example, E&E sector. It has been in Malaysia since 1970s, 50 years, and we now, in terms of global market share, have 13% of the global market share for semiconductor, and also is a major exporter to US when it comes to semiconductor, and export 25% of US needs. In fact, in November last year, we just signed an agreement, a cooperation with the United States on the supply of semiconductor to the United States. And we've seen increased interest and announcements made by companies like Intel, Texas Instruments, all that were done recently.
Right. Minister, this is JP Ong. I just want to stay on that point with regards to semiconductors. Indeed, we've seen during the COVID-19 pandemic how important Malaysia's semiconductor plants are actually to the global supply chain. In fact, a number of them also have cross and border investments in between Malaysia and China. But as we know, there has been a lot of pressure from the West to try and limit the technology for semiconductors and microchips into China. Is there a concern from Malaysia, especially from the Ministry of International Trade and Industry, that perhaps Malaysia might get pulled into this the way the likes of the Netherlands and Japan have in recent weeks or months?
Yes, we're monitoring this. Obviously, there are a lot of questions surrounding this, but what we have seen to date, and what we have been engaging with the various companies that are involved, especially from China, we have yet to see that impacting, because if you look at the companies in Malaysia, the semiconductor industry is predominantly still companies that are based, owned by Europe and also US.